We're in Scottsdale, Arizona, filming for the Hamilton College Jazz Archive, and Bill Charlap is my guest. You actually can look over at me.
Oh, you've got the two
Yeah.
cameras. How do you like that?
Congratulations on your career so far,
Thank you.
because I've been seeing your name all over the place. How does that come about?
It comes about from taking care of as much business as you can musically,
Yeah?
really. Jazz is all about word of mouth. In fact, the music business really is about word of mouth. But particularly jazz, because players say, I played with him and I liked playing with him. He was able to do this, this, and this, and it felt this way. It's more about feeling than anything else.
Yeah.
People got a good feeling when they were playing with you, besides the obvious things, you know,
Yeah.
which are, you know, he understands all the basics technically, or she understands all the basics technically, but beyond that, it's a feeling that people get. And so I've been fortunate to grow from all the different people I've played with, as all players do, you know,
Yeah.
keep our ears open.
Did you get a music education in a college level?
Well, I grew up very naturally with music because both of my parents are musicians.
Your mother was a singer, is that right?
Still is.
Yeah,
Sandy
okay.
Stewart,
Uh-huh.
and a great singer who sang with Benny Goodman and was a regular on the Perry Como show, Mitch Miller show, things like that. She had something of a hit record, or a minor hit at least, in the 60s, a song called My Coloring Book, which was Kander and Ebb's first hit, the writer's Kander and
Yes,
Ebb.
okay.
And she was
recall it.
nominated for a Grammy. So she's a professional singer, great one. Ella Fitzgerald won that year, and she was pretty good.
Yeah,
So,
okay. She was a good company.
yes, she
Yeah.
was. She's a marvelous singer.
Yeah.
And my father was Moose Charlap, who was a songwriter, composer.
Yeah.
The most famous thing he's known for is the music from Peter Pan, Mary Martin Peter Pan, which he wrote most of the music for songs like I'm Flying, I've Got a Crow, Tender Shepherd, I Won't Grow Up, That's All My Dad, as well as many pop songs such as I Was Telling Her About You might know that one. Joe Williams did that. Betty Carter used to sing it, I hear. And many others. He died when I was quite young. I was 6 or 7 years old, and he was only in his 40s, so he would have gone on. But my parents are both related very closely. I mean, they lived in the tradition of the American popular song, and that is a very focal point for me. It's a center point for what my being is about as a musician.
So that was surrounded, you were surrounded by that in your house as you grew up?
Yes.
That music?
Yes, and certainly that energy. My father was composing, sitting at the piano composing, and there were many well-known songwriters and lyricists who would come by our place.
Wow.
So I took that all pretty much for granted. They were just, kids don't know any of that sort of stuff. And I think now, my daughters, I have Sophie and Vivian. Vivian's only 7 months old at the time of this taping. Sophie is almost 3 years old. And they've met many very important jazz musicians through their life. They don't know. That's just Uncle Keeter, you know. So
That's great. Can you describe your improvising? I ask this question a lot, and I get a lot of different answers, but the thought process that happens when you're improvising?
At its best, and at the level I feel I'm at now, no thought. One should not be sitting there doing analytical thought when you're improvising. It's like language. You don't think about the next word you're going to say. You don't think about how to spell it or what that word is. You just say it. It's the same for me at the piano, same for any musician worth their salt as a jazz musician. You think a phrase, and you play that phrase. I don't think, gee, that's the third, that's the seventh of the chord, that's a dotted eighth, 16th, there's a whole rest here, there's a half, there's all the technical things.
Yeah.
So understand what I mean, and I hearken to language, because in language you have to know how to conjugate, you have to know how to speak properly, how to get your ideas across in many different ways. You might say, I walked up the mountain, and you might say, I slowly walked up the mountain, and then I ran, and then I stopped, and I took a rest. I had a ham sandwich, and then I got to the top of the mountain.
Uh-huh.
There's a lot of different ways to get there, and I know many, many different ways, just as you would in a conversation. But you don't think about it. You just think of what you want to express.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the best analogy I can give for what happens when I'm improvising. Behind it is a great deal of knowledge and experience, and the ability to listen. That's the most important thing, is to listen to the players around you, or if you're playing solo, to listen to the air. Listen to the space, and listen to what the space needs. If it doesn't need anything, don't play anything. And it's something like that.
Wow. That's a good answer.
Yeah.
Like that.
I could, of course, go into a very scholarly answer
Mm-hmm.
of we do this when we're playing on this form, and if I was teaching a lesson to a piano student, I would go into things like that. But I don't think that that's what it is finally about. It's finally about immediate expression of the idea.
Do you have to go through the certain amount of technical chordal scale knowledge to get to that point?
Scale knowledge, rhythmic knowledge, historical knowledge, everything, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. You have to have a full toolbox, or you won't be able to build a house.
Uh-huh. When you're playing in a situation like you did this afternoon with Roland Hanna,
Mm.
there was some pretty adventurous things that happened between you two. Had you guys done that before?
We've played two pianos once, one song,
Okay.
and it was like that immediately,
Uh-huh.
and that was many years ago. So, not that many, maybe 2 or 3.
Uh-huh.
You listen. We have a frame of reference, you know. We can talk about things musically. He can play a chord, and I know what chord he's playing, or he can get into a rhythmic idea or a feel or a groove,
Mm-hmm.
and I know what he's talking about. Or we might go on a flight of fancy where it's like, well, we might make it, we might not.
Uh-huh.
You know, it's a trapeze act. You see a great family, they trust each other. I mean, you have to be able to have a lot of trust to jump out there and do a backflip and hope you're going to get caught.
Uh-huh.
Well, that's something of what happens in duo piano, too. And duo piano, you've got 20 fingers. You don't always have to play with 20 fingers. In
Mhm.
fact, I like when there's some clarity in anything that I do, whether it's two pianos or anything else. I want to be able to hear all the parts. My favorite music has that counterpuntal nature to it. If you listen to any of the great rhythm sections, because that's very important to me, the rhythm section as a player, that's maybe the focal part of group playing for me, the interaction between the bass, drums, and piano. Listen to any of the great rhythm sections. You can hear always what the bass player's playing, what the drummer's playing, and what the pianist or guitarist or vibraphonist or whomever is playing the chordal instrument, if there is indeed a chordal instrument, is playing. You want to have that transparency. Well, the same for duo pianos, though it can get quite thick.
Yeah.
You can get in each other's registers. You might get into something like that. But the answer is you listen.
Uh-huh.
The answer is you listen. And you have, you try to have taste. You try to interact with taste. And you try not to think about it too much. You try not to develop an idea in an obvious way. Jimmy Roll said something great that I remember in an interview. He said something about, if you have an idea, play half of it.
Oh.
And that's great. That's what it's about, to some degree.
Yeah. Because you got half left over for some other time, too.
That's right, particularly when you're playing two pianos.
Yeah.
If you get real good at it, you ought to be able to complete each other's ideas,
Uh-huh.
or take each other's ideas in another direction. So
Yeah.
I hope that answers it in
Yeah,
some way.
definitely. Do you have a few precious recordings to you that really made an impression on you as you were growing up?
Changes all the time, because there are so many recordings. I happen to have a very large library of recorded music, which I've collected over the years, just out of being a fan and it's quite large and pretty comprehensive.
Uh-huh.
Listen to a great deal of classical music and jazz, and I can remember important records in many, not that many genres, but mostly classical music and jazz. I know the first record I bought was Vladimir Horowitz playing Liszt, the Hungarian Rhapsody No. 2, the one that he did live in at Carnegie Hall. That's some incredible piano playing. It's real gypsy music, very soulful. And on a pianistic level, it's ridiculous. I mean, it's just really unbelievable. Also, Art Tatum, Piano Starts Here. That one, the 4 recordings, the shorts of him playing Tea for Two and Tiger Rag, A Sophisticated Lady, something else on there too, I forget what the last one is. And the Gene Norman Shrine Concert, which is also on there. That was very influential, him playing Yesterdays particularly. The time and the flights of fancy, the harmonic ideas, the lines, you know, it's a very linear Tatum, particularly on that. That's a very important record for me. There were some early Oscar Peterson that my parents had. I think that was one of the first jazz albums I bought. The Horowitz was the first classical record, the first record, indeed. I was a little boy. I went to Barnes & Noble, and I said, "Do you have Homage to Liszt?" Probably said Homage to Liszt. And that's the record. I still remember the cover. It's this brown cover, and it's Liszt, the Abbey Liszt, the old Liszt on the cover. And I went and I bought this Oscar Peterson record many years later. It was Return Engagement. It's a Verve twofer that had a lot of Night Train on it, much of the classic trio with Ray Brown and Ed Thigpen. Those were real important. There are many others. It would be almost impossible to name them all, and I would certainly leave things out.
Right.
But there's a couple Desert Island discs for you, or at least the first records that I listened to.
Okay. Did your mother feel good about your career path into music?
Well, it was very obvious to my mother and my father that I was going to be a musician. I don't ever remember not playing. When people ask when I started, that's when. I always played the piano. And, you know, they were musicians. They certainly weren't saying, "Oh, you shouldn't be a musician." It was just more of a matter of, "Oh, you're a musician, okay.
Yeah.
That's obvious. You're not going to do anything else." I never thought I would do anything else. I never had a question in my mind about what I would do. Some kids, most children, aren't sure. I think maybe I want to be a doctor or a fireman, short order cook. I always knew I wanted to be a musician. I never had any question in my mind.
Was there any question about the kind of music?
Well, you know, I grew up playing songs like Broadway show tunes and things like that, but also taking classical music off of records, and it was all sort of improvised and made up, put together my own way. I wasn't classically trained, not till later, though I know the repertoire very, very well, not just piano, but orchestral music, because I'm a great fan of classical music, and I draw on the completeness of those composers, though I'm not trying to blend classical and jazz really in any way. So what was I saying? What kind of music would it be? It was just always improvised, and I was drawn to jazz because that's really the highest in improvised music. And the feeling of it, and of course its relationship to, it's just American music. It's just it's not ours. It doesn't belong to anybody. But that's the music that I grew up with.
Right. When you get a call to play a recording date, what kind of rehearsal time?
All depends on the date. You'd have to be more specific. There are dates when I go in and we get the music right there at the date, 5 seconds before we play it. And you just better listen and have a concept of what it is musically that the group is trying to get across, or the duet, whatever it is. Or I've had records where I've prepared extensively, where I've I'm preparing less now because I'm more experienced.
Uh-huh.
And I'm able to walk in with many years of experience and have that as preparation. But when I'm doing my own records, I'll prepare pretty extensively.
Yeah. You have a crew of musicians that you like to call. You have your own trio now.
Well, my trio is Kenny Washington and
Yeah.
Peter Washington.
Yeah.
And we've been playing together for the last 2.5 years or so. And there's a very natural connection between us, a very natural feeling about what we care about, what are the central forces
Uh-huh.
that we just a sort of center current to the things that we
Yeah.
care about musically, that's all.
Right.
And we don't really need to discuss very much. We never have. The approach happens very naturally. Both guys have great command, great understanding of their instruments historically, and are very analytical as well. However, it's all about feeling, and feeling first.
Yeah.
So with all of that, it allows us to cover a lot of ground.
Yeah. When we meet again down the line somewhere, can you envision things that will hopefully happen in your career for you?
Well, I remember people asking me even 10 years ago, what is it that you want to do?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is, I'm doing it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a musician. I remember something Dizzy Gillespie said, or we should all get down on our knees and thank God we're musicians. And I feel that way. I feel very blessed to have a life of this. And it's not just about having a career in music. Someone said something funny. You can make literally hundreds of dollars in this business. Listen, you're not going to be a millionaire. It's more than likely. You may have a nice middle-class income at some point if you're busy. But it's not about that.
Yeah.
It's about the riches that you have by playing music, the joy that you get of being able to express yourself on a very high and profound level at your instrument, just for yourself or to give to other people.
Mm-hmm.
And beyond that, what other career do you get to travel this way, see the world, get to know? There are no generation gaps, there are no racial gaps.
Yeah.
You know, I know people, and I'm close with people of all generations and races. I hate that word race anyway.
Yeah.
It's only the human
But I know
race.
what you mean. Right.
But all different backgrounds.
Right.
And that's a wonderful life. So I wouldn't pass that up.
That's great. And your kids get to meet famous people that years later
Yeah.
from now they'll say,
Well, hopefully they'll get to meet rich people who have a lot of love to give them, and that's something I found in the music from people who really are important to me.
mm-hmm.
They have a lot to give.
Well, I know you have to go play,
Yeah.
and I appreciate your well thought out words for us today. I appreciate it.
It's my pleasure.
And we'll have to make sure we meet again. Best of luck to you.
Thank you.